But again, there's a large variability between subjects, and between data sets. So if you have a data set with the LiveScribe pen, and you have participants doing that one, there might be between 10 and 71% of those segments were only scenario segments. So the next strategy people used was focusing on a visual cue. This was done when they couldn't create a scenario. This was usually in complex data sets where they had a hard time figuring out what was happening.
I don't know where to chunk it. They were indoors. Let's chunk it there.
And so he kind of based it on location, so he was going indoors, then outdoors, then indoors, then outdoors, not really knowing what the activity was, but that allowed him to kind of break it up by location. So in this one, 31% of the event boundaries were visual cues, where they based it pretty much off of something that they could see, but they didn't exactly know what was happening, so they just kind of focused on that and went from there. So this again was typical of the more complex data sets, and it allowed them a way to segment this activity when they didn't really understand what was happening. But very few people used this strategy when it was their own data set because they knew what was going on. And a lot of times they would kind of focus on location if they were using this. And so depending on the data set, it would vary from 0 to 77% of those segments were based on visual cues. The next one was a natural break. And so this was something where, like, either culturally or kind of like with the age group, people would see this as a break from that activity or a change in the activity, and it was easy to pick out.
So it looks like he's picking up some stuff. He's getting ready for the mission, which is really exciting. I wish he would, oh, what, the accident end program? That was it? That's all you did? That was so boring. And next program, all right, fine.
So one of the things that people seem to do is in the applications, if someone quit something or exited something, they would segment there because that was a natural break in the activity. They were stopping that task going on to the next one. So because of that, it was an easy place for them to create a segment. And so a lot of people had a lot of corresponding segments at those kind of places. So this was about 10% of the event boundaries. So this didn't happen all that often because there wasn't necessarily a common occurrence with the natural breaks. And this, again, was kind of culturally dependent. There were some that would be seen, like going on Facebook was taking a break from studying, but that might be dependent on people that use Facebook and understand what's happening. And then also, of the 5 different categories that were available, this was the one where people would most likely have the same segments. And again, there was a lot of variability. 0 to 65% of the segments in any given data set were a natural break. And so another one that people used were contextual clues. And so this was done by people that took the data set, and so they understood what was going on, and they could use things that weren't necessarily visible within this data set to break it up.
So I can't really draw legs. So I just drew more legs. And this leg actually, these pairs of legs were supposed to be part of this dude's, but then I mentioned that to my girlfriend at the time that I draw really stocky, buff legs, and those are supposed to be different from my legs. So I'm contrast between the 3 legs.
So he has this whole story behind these legs that no one else would obviously know because they didn't draw their own legs on the paper. And so this allowed him to kind of create a segment here that may not necessarily be seen by everyone else because it doesn't necessarily complete the drawing, but it completes his trying to draw his legs. And so this was only 7.5% of event boundaries, but again, this is mostly due to that only the person that actually did the activity could usually use the contextual cues as a segment. But in addition to that, there were a few people that engaged in some kind of similar activity or understood what was going on, or they had actually been to that activity. And so they were able to make contextual cues as well, saying, oh yeah, I remember this happened right here, even though you couldn't see that on the screen. And so they were able to do that as well. So there was like 0 to 18% variability, again, dependent on the data set. And a large portion of some people's segments were contextual cues, up to 50% in some individuals. And so the last category was just another category, stuff that just didn't really fit in any of those. There were a variety of ones where either someone just didn't say anything, or they said that I don't know why I'm segmenting, but I'm segmenting, and things like that. So here's an example.
Motion, motion, motion. Nothing.
he segmented randomness. Yeah. And so there were only 4% that fit into this category because the other ones pretty well fit into one of the other categories. And so there was 0 to 29% variability in this one between the data sets as well. So then one of the things I wanted to analyze was the reliability between the participants. So in order to kind of test this, I had each participant do their own data set where they segmented something they recorded with one of the 3 devices. And then in addition to that, I had them segment up to 3 other people's devices or 3 other people's data sets. And then we could compare those to figure out the difference between segmenting your own data set versus segmenting someone else's, in addition to how other people would segment your own data set. And so I created a series of graphs. So we have the event boundaries, which are color-coded by participant, and then the dashed lines determine whether there's an agreement between participants on a segment. So here we have the participant S's activity trails light data segmentation. And so you have participant S at the top, participant E, participant A, and participant K. And so you can see that even though they have a lot of segments all over the place, there's only a few that actually agree with each other. There's only 7 in this whole data set. And interestingly enough, participant S had a lot of contextual cues, and so that's why you have so many segments that don't match up with anyone else's, because they couldn't see that data. And so the points that match up to each of these segments are follows. So this is the first visual that everyone kind of agreed on was a good place to segment. And so this was kind of a natural breaking point where you have the window that's all extended, and it's obvious that he's not working on any individual thing right now. But he segmented here. This was the one Nastasha showed earlier because he was talking with his friend Neil. But everyone else kind of just segmented because it was different. And so then it changed slightly, and so everyone segmented again because he woke up his computer and it seemed like a relevant thing because nothing else had happened so far. And so then we have him working on his document and then taking a break with Facebook, which was one of those natural breaking points where pretty much everyone decided that he stopped working and he's starting to take a break, and then he goes back to work. So that was another natural breaking point. He's back to his activity, followed by he's doing some kind of something that's away from the activity again, back to the activity, and that was it. So then participant E, again you can see that there's a wide variety of points that people are segmenting at. So this is again dependent on kind of how they approach the problem. And so you can see there's 3 points where everyone kind of found a common ground. So here's someone saving, so it's a natural breaking point. They're finished with their project, they're saving it. Then they went from their project to Google. And so again, everyone put a segment in there, because again, a natural breaking point. And then they went to their email. So again, another natural breaking point. So then for the LiveScribe data set, on this one, the interesting thing is everyone pretty much segments at the end of a page. But in addition to that, one of the participants tried to segment at the end of every drawing, which correlated with participant P's end of every drawing. But his drawing, the reason he segmented there were contextual cues, which weren't the same as the participant J scenarios, but they just happened to line up. And so you can see like this was the first one that was finished, and then he had this one, and then went on to the next page, which was the exit strategy. And then this was not the end of a page, but they both lined up because they finished the infinite power dude. And so then you have the end of the page where he's added some other stuff in. And then you finish the head, which they both decided was a breaking point. And then you have everyone agreed that when the page was done. And then everyone agreed on this one as well. And so then you have LiveScribe, which was notes. And so as you can see here, there's a really wide, diverse group of segments. You have participant O, who had 3, and participant L, who had, I believe, 32. And so the difference is that participant L saw a lot of like interruptions and a lot of different points in there that kind of could be broken up. And participant O saw it as one activity, whereas participant U, whose data actually was kind of in the middle. And so you can see that they kind of finished their page of notes and kind of just keep moving on. And so each page of notes is where it was divided up. And so then for SenseScan, again, there's a really diverse group. You can see participant U has a whole bunch of data points, whereas participants B, Z, and D don't really have that many, because participant U actually focused on